Please. Making of station.
So, if you simplify it, the object of a date is to get to the next date. Right? That's the simplest objective. And everything should be focused on getting to the next date. So, if you say, which school is our kid going to, she's going to run. Or if, now why are we being, misogynistic, right? So if the lady says, Amar, and if you say what, and she's going to say our third son's name, you're going to run. Right? So avoid that temptation. That's what I mean by lust. Lust means don't go into a pitch or a communication session or whenever you're selling or marketing yourself, whether it is to investors, whether it is to customers or whether it is to employees, remember that you have to go one step at a time. Kindle enough interest for you and them to take it to the next level. Nothing more, nothing less. Don't try to sell the stock. It's not going to work. And I'll tell you why. So the corollary of this statement is gluttony. Don't put too much information into what you're trying to do. Right? So we'll take some use cases. So, you are into cold cuts, right? So, if you human beings don't have the capability to digest too much information. Too many sources and too much information we cannot digest. So, I can more or less guarantee you that whatever I say in the next 2 hours, you will probably retain 20% of this tomorrow. 1 week down the line, if I ask you what was the third word in the first slide, you cannot answer that question. Right? Our brains tend to ignore a lot of things. I'll give you a classic example. If I see your face, I'm not going to remember it pixel for pixel. The next time I see your face, I'm only going to remember a pattern. So if it looks roughly like you, I'll say, okay, for the techies, you know that brains are pattern making devices. Right? So while it's incredibly efficient at cognition, it's very poor at storage. If you look at it that way. Right? So don't try to put too much information into whatever you're saying. Just enough information for that person to understand what is it that you do. We will get into form and structure later, but avoid gluttony at all costs.
So doesn't that mean you're saying focus on patterns versus information?
No, I'm not saying. I'm not getting scientific.
I'm just saying in terms of when you talk about something, you're just talking about the general flow of it, rather than just of all your options.
Yeah, so if you throw all the options on the table, I'm not going to remember them anymore. That's the point I'm trying to make. Now, whether it's a buyer of cold cards, whether it's your next employee, or whether it's an investor, if you tell him I manufacture 35 different types of cold cards and proceed to detail those cold cards, that's wasted information.
Right.
You might think that you are conveying a lot of information, but actually you are just conveying data and it's pointless. It's not going to remember it. Correct? So convey simple things, don't overload anybody's brain. Again, greed is a sub-function of lust, of gluttony basically. Only opposites are greed is generic and gluttony is specific to food and stuff like that. So don't be greedy. Don't go into a session expecting the deal to come onto your table, expecting the paper to get signed, expecting all of these things. Right? Just focus on delivering your matter to an audience. Right? Anger. How many of you? So wrath is extreme anger. Right? How many of you heard about Flipkart's latest acquisition round of fundraising? So any idea how much they raised at what valuation? Both numbers are vulgar, but we'll discuss it later.
It's 12.
So they raised about $250 million in the last round. Values the company at close to $1.52 billion. Right? I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs get angry at that valuation. So you guys should have started Flipkart. What are you getting angry for?
So that's envy, no?
That is it. But anger at anything in general, don't bring emotion. See, the only point I'm trying to make here is that if you are passionate about your idea, don't get emotional about it. Right? A lot of people I have seen personally blow up in front of investors. See, the transaction is money. Right? Finally, it's just a financial transaction. Why are you getting emotional about it? If somebody chooses to give you money, that's great. If somebody chooses not to give you money, that is great too. That's fine. It's their choice, right? It's not really your choice. I've had to physically drag away the entrepreneurs from why don't you give me money? These are all statements. These are true statements, right? Don't carry emotion into a. You understand the difference between being passionate and being sentimental, right? Be passionate, don't be sentimental.
No, it's more about being defensive, right? It's like if, the investor suddenly says that, you're not doing this right. Like I remember we took a company for your start, IIM thing, and then they said, do you want to be a Microsoft or Apple? And then to keep amongst them, they're like, no, we want to be both, and they're like, you can't be both.
No, so investors will be, that's a very kind investor. Investors is a simple thing that is not going to do. So entrepreneurs will suddenly get angry. Who are you? I'm an investor. I'm the guy that's going to write you a check. Right? So if you're a single person company and somebody else doesn't believe in what you're doing, it's very easy to get angry or defensive. Say, boss, you don't get it. But that's not the object. So you've lost the plot, basically. Right? Instead of trying to convince that person to join your company, you ended up making one less friend and one more enemy. It's really not worth it. So don't let anger play a part. Don't get defensive, don't get possessive. It's very difficult. A lot of my recruitments are done through failed recruitments. I meet a candidate, that person has not come up to or he is not like our company. And then I've just told them, is there anybody else? Glad to add a little bit of spice, as smart as you. Yeah, of course, I have some preference. So, and hubris is just a sense of arrogance, overriding sense of arrogance. See, a startup is a very delicate, small thing. It's like a plant. Very easy to build. You're not a billion-dollar company that cannot go down. Just a very, very small bunch of people trying to do a bunch of things which you believe in. You need all the help that you can get. So there is absolutely no point in being arrogant or being egoistical. Ambition is great, arrogance is bad. Right? Pride is great. Pride in a good sense is great. Humility is actually good. I remember Hrithik Roshan said it's stupid not to be humble, and I completely agree. Completely. Lack of humility is the ultimate stupidity. Right? Okay. So what is your objective? Now, simple question, I've already asked this, but I'll just run through it. So you could have different objects. You could have raise money, put to one object. You might pitch to sell to customers. You might pitch to sell to potential employees. Sometimes you might just want help from somebody else, right? So you might want mentors, you might want advisors, you might be trying to create a board. Remember two things. One, these pitches are different. You can't use the same deck that you used to pitch to an investor to pitch to an employee. Can anybody tell me why? I mean, all the matter is there, right? It's the same set of information. But again, correct? So why should you even change? Any ideas? Correct. So remember, we talked about what is the objective. So for raising money, the objective is different. Your objective there is to tell the investor that there is very little risk here and there is a lot of return. Now, is a customer actually interested in that subject? No. What is a customer interested in? So I'm kind of getting fear in my heart right now. So these are not the right answers.
Customer wants to know that you can provide the service they expect, right? He said if they expect a certain product, you follow it within the certain hygiene thing which they have, or what it should fall in.
Money. Yeah. So pain solving at the least expense. This is what a customer wants. He has a current problem. Can you solve that problem? And can you solve it cheaper, better, faster, whatever? Put some adjective there. Can you do it? So have you understood the problem correctly and can you solve it for you? Guys, I am not gender biased. I just use him as a default. Please substitute her. It's difficult for me to use her for some reason. When this is the audience, keep her apology in advance. Okay. So remember that they should remember you for one thing. Right? They should not remember you for anything else. And most people pitch and leave it at that. I'm going to do a side track. How many of you guys watch grade television. By B grade I mean not Nat Geo, not Discovery, not History, not all these, BBC, not all these channels. But let's say a rung lower, India TV, anybody? Never heard of the channel?
Very funny. It's like a comedy channel.
Huh? So it's a comedy channel masquerading as a news channel, right? Right? Yeah. But even on Discovery, even on all these A grade channels, post midnight, how many people watch television? Post midnight. There's no shame in it. Post midnight is just television. So yeah. So but what happens post midnight? What do all the channels change to? Tele shopping, right? Right. I am seduced by a television. I can watch. If a channel comes up with tele-shopping ads back to back, 24 hours of the day, I watch it. Right? And I tell you why I don't want to buy any of those products. But I love the way they push all these nonsensical things to people, and there are people buying all this stuff. You might think this is absolutely ridiculous. Who will buy this stuff? The answer is millions of people. Millions. Right? And they use some very simple techniques that you guys can also use without denigrating yourself and without putting yourself at that level. So I'll just take one example. One example that I'm going to take is the famous ab reducer. Now there are 200 products like this. Right? There are 200 products, right? I mean, you can reduce your ab. I mean, except of exercise, there are probably 500 ways that you can reduce your abs, right? None of them work. Just FYI. If you don't go to a gym and you don't diet, you are not going to lose your belly fat. And those models were fit before they came on the ad. The models, they never show before and after picture. Have you ever wondered why? There is no before. They've been working out like that for 15 years. You know your body like that. Anyway, they make two simple points, right? You remember the ab reducer for one thing. What is the one thing you remember it for? You may or may not buy it, but you remember it for one thing. What is the one thing you remember it for? No, just the complete lack of effort to get a six-pack ab. They keep driving that inside your brain. Because this is the shortest, fastest, easiest, quickest way to get six-pack abs. That's one. What is the other? So that's your one takeaway. Remember that if you are selling a product or selling yourself or your company, not in the bad sense of the word, the person has to remember you for one thing. And one thing only. Because the brain is a fragile instrument. It can't keep too many things, too many bits of information inside it. So always remember to stand for one thing. See, cold cards, if you just tell me I'm doing cold cards, I'm not going to remember it. Right? We just had a discussion. I don't remember half the companies I meet. It's a fact. I don't remember 99% of the companies I meet. Because they're not memorable. But I do remember the 1% of the companies. And those are successful companies. And those companies have worked on their communication. They've worked on their product. And therefore they are memorable. What is the second thing that the post-midnight ad does very well? Next action steps. What do they force you to do? After they convince you that you don't need to do anything, you just need to take some light exercise you can do while watching TV and all the six times. Right? Now that they've convinced you of that proposition, what else do they do?
Bye.
Every ad forces you to buy. They don't just leave it. They don't just leave it hanging. They don't leave that sentence hanging. They say, pick up the phone, call us now. Right? And we give you a discount if you call us now. Now is very important. Right? So put this in the context of the people that you're appealing to. So your pitch should be memorable for one thing, and it should force the opposite party to take the next step. In the case of a date, it's always the next call. Right? In the case of an investor, what would it be?
The next meeting.
In the case of a customer, the next step, whatever it is. Vendor empowerment, scope of work, RFP, whatever it is. Right? And in the case of an employee,
Joining.
see, again you're jumping. Now you're going to Amar. You just met the guy, for God's sake.
Will you join?
Will you join? You sit and have a coffee with an employee, do you think he's just joining?
You want to see the salaries and the...
Something, some discussion, right? Either a compensation discussion or an interview or something else. Don't jump to the end of the queue. That's never going to work. Clear? So please remember this. If you don't remember anything else of what I tell you, please remember this one thing. You should stand for one thing, that thing should be memorable, and your audience should be forced to take the next step, which is pre-decided. You've already decided what step you want to take. Okay? Most people come up with very jazzy slides, they put up deadly presentations. You don't remember what happened, you remember it was nice pictures, something happened, and you don't remember what was in the deck, and they don't force you to take action. This is a fatal flaw. So, sir, just to answer your question, we could have just done this one slide or one more. What do investors want? I'm just taking this one example because everybody keeps asking for this one example all the time. So, what do investors want? Right? There's simple answers. They want a team that can execute. How many of you think you have a unique product or a unique idea? So, I hate to break your bubble, but you're wrong. There's probably somebody else doing a variation of what you're doing, more or less. Maybe you're doing more, maybe you're doing less, but there is competition. And competition is a good thing, it indicates the presence of a market. There's nothing wrong with competition. Right? So you are not doing anything unique. So an investor, what is he interested in? So all of them are greedy pigs, right? We know that. What are they interested in?
Return on investment.
Yeah. So there are two parts to it. The opposite of return is, or the other side of return is
Loss.
risk. Right? So investors, being the greedy pigs that they want minimal risk and maximum return. Everybody wants it. If I offered you that deal, would you take it? If I offered any of you guys zero risk and 200% return, will you take it? Yes or no?
Yes.
No, you run away. That's a scam. That's a complete scam. Risk and return should be proportionate. If anybody offers you a deal that sounds too good to be true, start hunting for your footwear. Just run. Right? So zero risk, 200% impossible. Zero risk, 50% impossible. As the risk rises, so does the return. Remember, and investors play high return, high risk games. If I put money in your company tomorrow and you go down, what's left of my money? Couple of old chairs and computers, right? Nothing else is left. Or in your case, ton of gold cards, which are spoiling as we speak, right? So investors want maximum return and minimum risk. They don't want zero risk. They want to see how you are minimizing the risk and maximizing the return. Here there's the equity game. They don't want their money back. Please do not make statements to investors like, you give me money, I'll give it back to you. With interest, they'll run away. They are playing equity, they are not playing debt. They are not your money lender. You understand the difference between debt and equity, I'm sure. Yes or no? Excellent. So one way to minimize that risk is to make sure that the team I'm putting money into can actually execute stuff. Right? So you need to demonstrate execution capability to the investor. How much do you think your idea is worth? How many of you think you have great ideas? So most people don't have a great idea, don't work out. Other things to do with your time. Right? But how much do you think that idea is worth? Just the idea.
Zero.
Exactly. That is the right value of an idea. The value of an idea is zero. That idea sitting inside your head is not going to make any money. That idea inside a loss-making company is going to go bankrupt, it's not going to make money. Right? So if you know the idea is zero, then what is the investor putting money into? You. Execution. You have to convince him, how are you going to execute this? So let's take the, sorry, I'm on cold cuts, you were the first guy to get up, I asked you to sit down, you were still standing. So we'll keep using your example throughout this. And somebody politely says, sit down, you should sit down. But anyway, so cold cuts, as an investor, why do you want me to put money into your company? There are other cold cut guys. Cold cuts is not like any salad, any dessert bar has cold cuts. And I'm sure hotels have hundreds of suppliers to source cold cuts. I'm not, even if you don't give me an answer on the spot, it's okay. But please be prepared for that. So there are hundreds of ways in GIS. Right? Sorry, your business was cheese. Cheese, so I don't even need to tell you. I go to a hypermarket to buy cheese, I come back confused. There are just 400 varieties of cheese available. So what is it in you that's going to make you execute? Now, it could be industry exposure. Let's say that I've been in this business for 10 or 15 years. It could be technical competence. It could be something else. Right? But it has to come through. This you have to drive, saying, I'm the person who is doing this. They need $1 billion. Why do you say this? Why do investors need $1 billion market?
Make $1 million maybe. That's what they could make.
No, but why do they need $1 billion market? What is the answer? Why not a $10 million market? That's a large market, right?
It's a slice of the pie.
De-risk. So if you are extraordinarily good at what you do, then your market is going to be very big. People are going to catch up. At which point of time the pie needs to be big enough so that even if there are 10 competitors in $1 billion market, even if you have 10% of the market, you're still $100 million. Whereas if the market itself is only $10 million to start with, and if you have 10 competitors in that market, you're $1 million company. There's no fun in that. Right? Yeah. So it's very important to convince them that this is a large and growing market. It's a growing market. It's not a decreasing market. It's an increasing market. These two things need to come through. You are the right people in the right market. 5 to 20x return on investment. So I put 1 lakh in you, I need 20 lakhs back. Which means if I put 1 lakh in you, and if I get 10% of that company, that 10% should be worth 20 lakhs, which means the company needs to be worth 2 crores. Why? You can ask why.
No, it's a high risk.
Don't ask the investor why. Ask me.
No, but the investor invests in maybe 4 or 5 companies, otherwise only one will do, so that one has to balance the other.
Exactly. And he has to make a profit also, right? So typically you invest in 10 companies, 9 of them will tank, which means he needs a 10x return just to break even. And boss, इतना पैसा गवाया है तो थोड़ा पैसा कमाने का भी है. So that's why 15 to 20x. And the only way he is going to make money is if you get sold. Right? There are very, very few dividend investors in India. I don't know too many of them. Dividend investor is I take 10% of your company and you give me 10% of your profit. Sleeping partner both ways. Very, very few. And if you want to grow quickly and if you want to, exit and make a lot of wealth, then please take on equity investors, don't take on dividend investors. Please read your markets.
So you're saying that this guy is only investing in you for you to sell your company and for him to make profit, that's it. There's no other way in which in terms of the company growing and then he takes his chunk out and says, okay, you can do it.
How will you take this chunk out? I own 25% of the company, right? Or whatever number. How will I take my chunk out? What chunk?
You sell it off to another person who's ready to take your place.
Who's going to be that person? Somebody should need exactly 25% of this company. Who is that person?
Okay, so every investor is looking for sale.
There's no other option. Is there any other option? How do I get my money back? Multiples of it. So let's let's take this example. Let's say, for example, there's a secondary market for these shares, right? Now, let's say one guy has to, one guy only wants 5%. What do I do with the balance 20? One guy wants 30%. Can I give it to him? So you bought a car, a second-hand car, thinking it's going to be worth some money. If you start selling it part by part, by the time the entire car gets sold, it will be dead and gone. Not going to work.
No, I used to work at MapMind and then the investors kept changing. There was a Nexus and then.
See what happened. So he wants an exit. Somebody should buy out his entire stake, or the company should get bought out. Does he have any other exit? No. So when the investor changed, so Nexus, let's say, came in and bought somebody else out, right? Plus they bought some more shares from the promoter. Plus they put some more money into the company, correct? Which is why Mappa India became so big so quickly. Why did they become so big? Because they had a hell of a lot of money backing them. And everybody made money. See, for this, there are only two paradigms in the world. One is a control paradigm and one is a wealth paradigm. Right? Control paradigm is I own this company. So the guy across the street, there are lots of small shops. They are all 100% owners of their company. Right? But would you call them wealthy? Can you name one ultra wealthy person in India? By ultra wealth, I mean something north of, let's say, 500 to 1,000 crores. For the purposes of this discussion, we are not including politicians. Even though they kind of run their outfits like a company only nowadays. But for this purpose, we are not including politics. Right? Can you name one person in India who's worth, let's say, more than 1,000 crores, who owns 100% of this company? And we're talking about legal ways to get money. Lahod, I'm sure, is worth more than 1,000 crores. I don't want to go to jail. Rule number one when you start a company, don't go to prison. That's rule number one. Right? Lahod doesn't. Anyway, but the point I'm trying to make is it's much easier to make money legally than illegally. And large amounts of wealth are created only when the wealth is shared. Mukesh Ambani, for example, does not own 100%. He does. We keep saying Tata Birla, but Tata doesn't own 100% of his company. He does Birla. So there is a control paradigm and then there is a wealth paradigm. You have to choose which one you want. Neither is right and neither is wrong. You can be perfectly happy running a small boutique shop, supplying gold cards to fine dining restaurants in Goa. There is nothing wrong with it. Right? But you will never make enormous amounts of money with it. If you're okay, that's wrong.
SAS Global is that right?
Sorry?
SAS Global, that's still a privately owned thing. It's not really.
See, I said 100% of the company. It doesn't matter whether it's privately or publicly owned. The owner, see, the moment it becomes a private limited company, there are two directors and two shareholders. Khatam. Straight away. Privately owned does not mean 100% ownership. And a good exit in 2 to 3 years, because I can't keep sticking around with you forever. So VC will say, I will put my money, you grow on my money, you grow very fast, very quickly, sell to another company, or let you raise another round of funding and I want my exit. Right? Early stage investors will talk this language. Maybe 3 years will become 4 years, but not more than that. And you have to convince them that you have this mentality, that you have the mentality to share, you have the mentality to grow. If you can't convince them, you will not get there. The same way, if you can't convince a girlfriend that your boyfriend will take, girlfriends are not really looking for husbands, and believe me, boyfriends are not looking for wives. It's a obvious thing. So don't try to convince people of something that you are not, or you cannot deliver, or that they don't want. Competitive sustainable advantage. Again, cold cuts. You shouldn't have got up actually. Should have. this clinic with you. Yeah. So cold cuts, what is the advantage that you enjoy over other cold cut manufacturers? Or cheese. I spread my risk. So what is it that what is it that you can provide in cheese that nobody else can provide? Is the question that you have to answer. So in technology, it's very easy. I want to share an example. I mean, since it's food, I want to share one example. Like somebody I know works in ITC, and they've just launched a chocolate-filled biscuit called. Sorry. No, chocolate-filled biscuit.
It's
Some magic, right?
Yeah.
Selfie is something dark magic or
Yeah.
Dark
something.
fantasy.
Dark fantasy, exactly, dark fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've launched that. Now the process for making that biscuit, if IDC is to be believed, is patented.
What?
Is patented.
What is it?
The process for making that biscuit. Right. So that is a competitive sustainable advantage. So patents last for 20 years. Any musician or any lyricist that writes a screenplay is copyrighted. So therefore it's valid for 60 years and even more. Right. So that's a competitive sustainable advantage. Javed Akhtar's source of revenue is never going to dry. Sometimes your competitive sustainable advantage is your face, not my face. Generally, if you have a good looking face, for a short while, maybe 10 years. It's a competitive sustainable advantage. Right. I said that I had a competitive sustainable advantage, let's say 50 years ago. Already defaming a lot of people on camera. So you have to have a competitive sustainable advantage, which is something that the competition cannot easily replicate. Now, it doesn't necessarily need to be in the domain of intellectual property. It can also be other things. I'll give you an example. So, what is Apple's competitive sustainable advantage? Because everybody loves to talk about Apple, right?
Tons of money, they keep going forever.
No, lots of companies have tons of money. Nokia had tons of money, they're bankrupt. BlackBerry had tons of money, they're bankrupt. So, I'm not making sweeping statements here, but Apple's competitiveness, at least as of now, is basically user experience and design. Products are very well designed, and the user experience is very low friction, right? Which is why they sell the amount that they sell. Right? So, similarly, I'll give you an example closer to home and foods, because I realize you guys are in food. What is Unilever's competitive sustainable advantage? Cannot be good, at least in the near future. So, when you are talking foods, you would talk companies like Nestle, like Unilever.
Number of retailers they have.
Distribution, you cannot beat distribution. Cannot beat. It cannot be created overnight and it cannot be beaten overnight. Buying power, media buying power, largest advertiser in India. He has enormous leverage with television channels, all media in fact. That becomes a competitive system. So always think, when you start a business, how can I create something that the competition